Here to talk about the view from the other side of the table is Larry Dorman of the State Employees Bargaining Agent Coalition. Also joining in on the conversation, Pat Scully of Scully Communications and the Hanging Chad. Thanks, both of you, for being here.
Thanks, Larry.
Larry, I guess if we could start off with, we were just talking with Colleen about the tenor of the conversations, and what's your understanding of how it is in there, and whether their familiarity with each other is helping things along, you think?
Obviously, compared to the previous two administrations that had a fundamental lack of respect for the frontline workers, there's a marked contrast. Now, that doesn't mean we don't have difficult issues in front of us, and that these talks and these discussions are easy, but there is an atmosphere of respect. And both sides are deeply engaged. The talks are frank, they're constructive. We're all trying to get to the same place, which is a Connecticut with a better economic future, and a Connecticut that is a good place for middle-class workers to live in.
The number one question that we get on the website, I'm sure that Pat gets a lot of questions on the Hanging Chad, is why would the union give concessions? Why? To save jobs, obviously, but beyond that, out of the goodness of your heart and the hope for a good economy, or from a practical standpoint,
right.
Why would you?
Well, look, and it's a fair question to ask, and certainly when the governor put out the $2 billion figure, that raised the bar to an incredibly high level, and when we look at the broader economic context and what's happening in Connecticut, it's a state where the super rich and the largest corporations have not been asked to pitch in and to sacrifice a proportionate share. So certainly it's a difficult hill to climb, but it's one we're willing to do. We want to protect the services that we provide, that our members provide to the public. In any economist, and economists on both sides of the political aisle, will tell you that cutting public services, cutting jobs, laying off people in these troubled times is a prescription for further disaster and further depression.
Larry, I think in the past, at least in my experience with the legislature, labor has always had both political leverage and sympathy with at least legislators.
Yep.
Doesn't appear to be that doesn't appear to be the case this time. If you go back to the last Quinnipiac poll when they asked about it was some time ago.
Right.
But at the same point, the average person doesn't seem to have a lot of sympathy for state workers right now when they compare them to private. Fair or not? Is that something you folks have been having to struggle with?
Pat, we're mindful of so many things, but I think that when you look at what's happened in other states with attacks on workers in general and unions in particular, from Wisconsin to Ohio to Indiana to New Jersey, with those attacks have come upticks in the general population's appreciation for the fact that unions do fight for working families, that we're the last and only voice that's out there that can actually advocate for people when they're laid off, when they're having their benefits cut. So I don't sense antipathy. In fact, I sense much the opposite. And legislators are in a difficult place. A budget is in place, but it's contingent on a successful outcome of our discussion. So I certainly understand that component of it. This is an anxious time for legislators as well.
And don't you think, though, that to add to the bad rap that state workers get, that the unions might look like bad guys if this doesn't come through?
That's it would be disingenuous to say that we haven't been demonized in the past. But again, the things we stand for, rock solid middle class values, a decent health care plan, a decent retirement, a decent wage, those are good things, and those are the bedrock of a middle class existence that's becoming more scarce in Connecticut. So we don't want to be part of some kind of manufactured fight that pits one set of middle-class workers against another. And that's why we're not walking away from these discussions. We're staying locked up, and we're going to do our best to keep our sleeves rolled up and get this thing done. A lot depends on it. We realize that.
And a lot of the reports that have been coming out of the negotiations, such that it is, even characterizing them, there seems to be a sense that it's an all-or-nothing deal. Either you get to $2 billion or you don't.
Right.
Is there a middle ground?
It would be difficult for me to speculate on that, Patrick. The thing what we're trying to do is remain fixed at the table and come to a mutual settlement that's going to get the economy moving forward, and that's going to lead us to a better place economically. And that's all we can do. So and it gets back to Lori's original question. The one thing that is positive is that there is a constructive atmosphere. So we're hopeful.
Do you feel, though, that your hand was kind of pushed when they passed the budget without concessions?
You know, I get asked that a lot, and as I've told reporters, including you in the past, I mean, nobody is going to put any greater sense of urgency on us than ourselves. And the truth is that we just saw today some of the pink slips start to go out. Over nearly 150 of them were issued to frontline prison workers at Bergen Correctional in Mansfield. So now you have the prospect or the specter of layoffs that are going to be devastating to the community because our members spend money on Main Street. You know, this isn't about Wall Street. This is about Main Street. But Bergen Correctional Institute probably has I believe has the lowest rate of recidivism. Now what happens to the inmates? Where do they go? There's talk of merging them into York, which is a female facility. There's talk of reopening parts of Gates, which is supposed to be closed. And I think that's where you see the nexus of our concerns. You're laying off people, you're cutting services, you're putting inmates in limbo who need to get out and get reintegrated back into society and hopefully not have to go back to prison. So this is the scenario that we are working very hard to avoid.
There seems to be a sense on everyone involved that they all have contingency plans.
Yep.
If 5,000 workers at Pratt & Whitney got laid off, or any other big company laid off, people would be freaking out.
Yeah.
I mean, have you been preparing your people, 5,000 of them possibly, for being laid off? How does that affect the economy? How does that affect their families?
That's all we talk about with our members. I've gone to numerous meetings with our members, and we talk about precisely what you just articulated. Layoffs are devastating. Cuts in services are devastating. Cuts to the municipalities, to the cities and towns would be devastating. And we're trying to avoid that scenario. But at the same time, our members get it, and they understand that they're not the cause. You know, they're not the reason. They are being blamed because it's politically popular to scapegoat unionized workers, particularly in the public sector. But they're firmly middle class. We're fighting for something that's larger than our own collective bargaining agreements. We're trying to make sure that working people have a place in this economy. So at least it gives us an opportunity to have that conversation and to try to allay their concerns. But right now, Patrick, we're hearing a lot of concern, a lot of anxiety.
I mean, and kind of, I would say that the people who showed up to those town hall meetings repeating over and over, we're getting hit twice. I mean, I think they're like, this is what we were talking about.
Yeah, our members are taxpayers too, and they're upstanding community members too, and they try to spend money on Main Street in the mom and pop shops. So I think you're absolutely on target. This is going to have devastating consequences on Connecticut's economic recovery, and I know the governor knows that as well. So that's why both sides are working as hard as they possibly can.
And as of this taping, we have no deal, but we're still talking?
Talks are ongoing, but there is no agreement as this is taping.
All right. Well, we wish you good luck, and we appreciate you taking time out of this busy time for you.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Larry.
Thanks, Ben.
Coming up, former Lieutenant Governor Michael Fedeli is here to tell us how he sees things from outside the Capitol and what he might have done differently.